Welcome back to another episode of the Purpose Babe Show. I'm your host, Corie Clark, and I have missed you guys for a while. We have just been enjoying summer and just living life and have had a lot going on. So we have just let the podcast be its own little thing for now. And I'm really trying to soak in these last days of summer before our youngest starts school again. We homeschool, as you most likely know if you have been listening for a while or following me for a while, and we don't start until after Labor Day. But I did have a friend reach out, and we wanted to share her story and her new book that's launching. And so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna kick it back up, bring another show to you this summer so that I can share my amazing friend Tammy with you. So I'm really excited about this episode today because Tammy and I actually have so many things in common in the way that we want to help people, in the way that we believe we should be living our lives. And she's just such a sweet, sweet friend. She's an amazing businesswoman. She's a coach, all the things, but she has such a sweet spirit. For as long as I've known her, she's just always been so kind. And so when she reached out and I found out she had a new book coming out, I was like, yes, of course. I need to share you with my people. So we will be kicking things back into gear around the podcast, around some new exciting things happening with my business. We talk a lot about, how we really need to embrace who we are and not apologize for it. And, that's something that I've been doing a lot of lately. And, I've always been really honest and open with all of you about my journey and about what I believe in. And so I just have some shifts that are happening and still happening inside of me. And so I have just been praying so much about what this next season is going to look like for my business and for helping other women who are trying to build their business and have it aligned with their purpose and have really been embracing, new communities that I'm part of. And so I'm excited. I'm excited about what's in store, and I don't even know what that's all going to look like, but there are a few exciting things that I am working on and that I am sure of, and so I'll be sharing more about that in future episodes. But for now, I want to introduce you to my beautiful friend, Tammy. So Tammy is a life and business mindset coach and the host of the Intentional Life podcast. She's passionate about helping people live into who they were created to be. She's the author of the now released, I was going to say soon to be released, but it is out, you guys. She is the author of the new book, Unapologetic, Stand in Your Power. She believes that we can truly impact the world around us by embracing our unique nature and unapologetically living our best life. So, I will have links to her new book in the show notes, and we will talk about it in the show. But I just want you to, as you listen to our conversation, be open to new ideas. If you hear something and your first thought is like, oh, I already know this, I've heard this before, I just want you to be open and to really let yourself start to embrace who you are. And if you are like, I don't even know who I am, then maybe that's what you need to start being open to, is finding out who God created you to be, why He's put these passions and desires on your heart, because it is for a reason, and really learn to step into that. So I hope you guys enjoy the show. I loved every second of my time with Tammy. Well, welcome to the show, Tammy. I am so excited to introduce you to my listeners and have you on the show and catch up. I
We have so much history, and it's been like years since we've connected actually like face to face over Zoom. But I'm so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. I am a loyal listener to the show, so it's so fun to be able to have this conversation with you.
Oh, yay. I was so excited when I got your email. I was like, of course, let's get you on the show. So we have lots to talk about, but before we dive into like the fun, exciting new things you have going on, why don't you share a little bit of your backstory? You can share how we met if you want. Let my listeners know who
Yes.
you are.
Yes. So my name is Tammy Helfrich, and I'm a life coach and a business mindset coach. And I basically about 8 years ago, I had been in the corporate world for about almost 20 years and was doing all the things, right? Like worked for a great company, made great money, traveled the country, did all the things that everybody tells us that you should do. And I kind of looked around and thought, is this it? Is this what I'm going to do for the next 20 plus years of my life? And so that kind of took me on a journey of really trying to understand myself better and looking outside of the corporate world, which led me to reading lots of books and going to lots of conferences and then meeting people on the internet, which is how I met Corie years ago through the Dreamers and Builders group with John Acuff. And so it's just been this journey of really trying to understand who I am, how I've been created, and then how do we live that out, which is why I love the work that you do and thinking about purpose, because I know for a long time I was trying to find my purpose, right? Instead of just learning how to live with purpose and learning how to be who I am. And so now I'm a coach and I'm an author and I have a podcast called Intentional Life. And a lot of what I talk about is just really helping people figure out who they are and then live unapologetically in themselves and bring their awesome. I always talk about people bringing their awesome to the world, which is so much of what you do as well through helping people bring their business to the world.
I love that. I love that. And being unapologetic, it's so important. And I think people just, they don't realize that they do have something awesome that they can bring to the table that sets them apart from everybody else. But, that might be doing something
Yes.
similar. And so I love what you're doing. And yes, so we met, I mean, how many years ago has it been? Like,
I don't know.
were you at the
Eight?
first
Maybe was it
Streamers and
2000?
Builders?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I was met John like before Quitter. And so I was
Oh, okay.
went to like the original Quitter conferences.
Okay.
And then so I was a part of the Start group and
Okay.
then Dreamers
Yeah,
and
because I was
Builders.
part
And
of
yeah, from the
Start,
very
but
beginning. I don't know. Was it?
yeah, I
Yeah.
couldn't go to
Was
the
it
Start
2000? I don't know how
conference.
long ago it was.
Anyways, the first one I went to was in Tulsa, and that was, I know it was 2014 because it was right when my book came out. And so,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, my book came out in June of 2014. So, but obviously, like we had met online before that. So, yeah, it's been years. It's been at least
Yeah.
seven.
I
Like I
think
think
it
2013 was when he had his Dreamers and Builders group. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think so. I think you're right. It's just been
Crazy.
a long time and so fun to watch you and just so many people that we know and just what has happened over that time. It's just
I know.
beautiful.
I know. It's amazing. It's amazing. So, well, I'm really excited because you have a new book coming out. So, why don't you let us know what your new book is and what it's all about?
Yes, thank you so much. It is called Unapologetic, and it is all about living into who you've been created to be and no longer apologizing for it. Because what I tend to see is that many of us we're unique and we're different and we have things that we like and we ways that we like to do things in the world. But if that doesn't fit into a certain mold that other people tell you that it should, we tend to apologize for it. And then we tend to apologize for who we are. And if you think about it as kids, we don't do that. Kids don't do that. They rarely apologize for who they are, or what they like, or how they want to dress, or anything. Right. And so somehow we kind of unlearn that. And so this book is all about actually learning how to unlearn being apologetic for who you are. And so I'm really excited. It'll be coming out in mid-August, and it's very similar to so much of what you talk about of just leaning into who you are, really understanding who you are, how you've been created, and then living that out in a very intentional way, not to be a jerk and not to just say this is who I am, like it or not, but more from a just living um in a space of really knowing who you are and allowing other, because I believe when you do that, then you allow other people to be who they are and you don't try to change them.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much. And it's so true because I know for so long, like I used to do that. Like, maybe not necessarily apologize for the way I was, but I would be a little bit less of who I was because I didn't want
Mhm.
to come across as like, overly confident, or, people would say those things like, like they would just say little remarks about how strong-willed I was and that kind of stuff. And so I always looked at those things as a bad thing, and I would kind of hold myself back. And so now I've learned to, and I still have work to do. I feel like we'll always have work to do, which is good. I think we should be
Yes.
working on ourselves till the day we die. But it's that whole like holding yourself back, making yourself a little bit less than who you really are because you don't want to offend someone, or you don't want to make someone feel like they're inferior, and you're so right, because when you actually do show up as, exactly who you're supposed to be, you're giving other people permission to do the same thing.
Yes. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think a lot of times it isn't necessarily that you are apologizing for it, but it is that you're just holding yourself back in some way. I mean, that's been my journey. So much of the learnings that I've had too, of just learning to be okay with who I am from a really healthy place. I think that's the difference, right? A lot of people are just come across as, very arrogant or just, someone I was coaching someone the other day and they used the word stuck up, which I hadn't heard that phrase in such a long time, but that there's that idea of like you think that you're better than someone, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about really owning who you are so that you can bring that to the world, which then gives other people the freedom to do that because they see that and they watch that and they want to learn how to do that too.
Yeah, I love that. So what led you to write this book? I know you do life coaching. Was it a lot of stuff that you've been helping people through?
Yes, yes. So many of my clients, this is a theme that continues to come up. And then this has been a lot of my work as well, as I have learned how to do many of the things that you said, really just learn to understand who I am, what I like, how I want to work, the freedom that I want to have. And so I want people to have that experience as well with whatever they do. It doesn't mean they have to leave the corporate world and become an entrepreneur like I did. It's really figuring out what you want and no longer living in other people's expectations. And so I do a lot of work with my clients and I have just always wanted to write a book. I wrote an ebook years ago and watching you write your books and other people, it's just been one of the things that I discovered when before I left the corporate world was my love for writing. And so I had started a blog again or started a blog at that time and really was writing. And so it's been a dream of mine. And I think the pandemic, really kind of helped push me. I wrote a lot of it during that because I just thought, what am I waiting for? That was kind of what I took a lot from the pandemic was just, okay, now or never. I mean, you say you need the time to write a book, right? Let's do it. So, and it,
Yeah.
it was, I mean, it was a pretty long journey. I had actually outlined a book, which didn't end up being this one many years ago. But it's a process, I think, writing that first book, as you very well know.
Yes, it is. And I have another book like half written sitting on my computer, and I'm always like, I really, really got to do that. I really got to get back to
Yes.
that because it's the same. I love writing, but when you commit to writing a book, it's different because you're like,
Hmm.
wait, I'm not like, I'm kind of doing this because I enjoy it, but I'm kind of doing it because I feel like I have to now. And, you give yourself these deadlines, and then you start getting into like the technicalities of it, and it becomes like almost like a burden. And so
Hmm.
I don't know why. I know I've just been holding off, but, I feel like you said, over the pandemic, I really didn't do writing. For me, the last year and a half, it was really like I stopped doing a lot of what I was doing. Some reasons because I had to, like, obviously couldn't have my live event that I was supposed to have, but it made
Right.
me really reassess like what I was doing. Like, do I love what I'm doing? Do I still feel like this is what I'm called to do? And, moving across the country was very unsettling. And we didn't even move into the house we're in until January, so I just, part of it, I was like, are you just making excuses for yourself? Or like, what's going on here? And it really was a lot of like soul searching and getting realigned with my purpose and making sure I didn't jump back into something just because life was starting to get back to normal. And end up not being happy. So yeah, instead of like sitting and writing a book for the last year and a half, I did a lot of like, what are you doing here?
Right. And I did too. Yeah. So, I mean, I wasn't writing that whole time for sure, but I think that was kind of more what prompted me to pick it back up again. Yeah, I think so many of us, that's where we're at. I think if you haven't at least even thought about that, that's probably, I mean, and everybody's in a different place with, where you were and all of that. But I think that really just my continual theme has been, life is short. And so we can keep talking about doing these things. And a book was one of the things that I really wanted to do. And so it has been quite the process. I mean, I find that I love to write, but I like to keep things really short and simple. So then when we got into the editing process, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't like this rewriting and different people having opinions about it. But that's actually like the beauty of the craft too, more of, I mean, it's a much better book because we went through that time to go
Hmm.
through that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, let's chat about. I know you love to help entrepreneurs, but in a little bit different approach than some coaches might do. So, I would love for you to share, who you love to help and how you love to help them.
Yeah. So I have a heart for entrepreneurs just because I think that was so much of my journey was I suppressed my entrepreneurial spirit for such a long time being in the corporate world. And so I love to help entrepreneurs again because I think we all have something awesome to bring to the world and we do it in such unique different ways, but most of the time what ends up happening is we get in our own way because we get in our head, we think everybody's already done it and we can't do it differently. And so I really love to help people look at, first of all, why you want what you want. I think that's so important. And you talk a lot about that too, really looking at what do you want to create and what is the life that you have, and then building your business around that versus building this business that then looks nothing like the life that you want to create. And also just to have support, because I think as entrepreneurs, it can be such an up and down journey that it's really important to have people around you, which through having your society and your groups that you have. And so, yeah, I have a lot of clients who are not entrepreneurs too, but I do definitely have a heart for them to help them really feel confident and feel and kind of just get over the mind drama. So much of us have so much mind drama, especially when it comes to entrepreneurs and putting ourselves out there in unique ways, that I want to help people walk through that.
I love that. So, what would be like if you were talking to someone who you could tell like they were having some major like mindset trauma? Like, what's
Hmm.
something that like somebody listening could easily apply to kind of work through a little bit of that? Like, right now, while they're listening, just like an easy tip.
Yeah. So the best tip is to really try to stop and just listen to yourself, because we have so many thoughts a day that sometimes we don't even notice that we're having them or how we're talking to ourselves. So that's one really quick tip, is just I even just take a deep breath. I was coaching someone yesterday and she said she keeps finding herself like holding her breath. So even just taking a deep breath and being in the moment can be super helpful. And then also I think if you have a lot of mind drama, it's so helpful to write it down just to get it out of your head. There's something scientific about actually writing things down because, as you know, we'll in our head, our to do list or the things that we have to do are like 1,000, but then if you actually sit down and write them down, they might be 10, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes it's just interrupting. That's the best thing I would say. Find a way to interrupt. Sometimes it literally means getting up and going outside for a walk and completely giving your brain, I like to call it giving your brain some space to breathe, because we think that we if we just focus intensely on whatever the problem or whatever it is that we're doing, that will fix it, but it usually doesn't. It usually means you have to interrupt it in some way.
Yeah, totally. I think that's so important too. Like what you said at the beginning, a lot of times we don't realize what thoughts are running through our heads. And when we can just like captivate them, when we can stop and say, like, what am I telling myself? What is racing through my mind right now? And because a lot of people don't realize that some of the negative things they're feeling is because of their own negative thoughts that they're having, So, and I love that. Like
Yes.
I use my brain dump every day. Like I love writing
Mhm.
out everything I got to do because that's how I feel. I'll wake up, I have so much to do today. And then when I write it down, I'm like, oh, just like 5 things. Let's bust these out. I
Right,
love it.
right. And the other thing I would say too is to not judge yourself. That's also part of the problem.
Mm,
We have this mind drama, we have all these thoughts, and then we judge ourselves on top of it. What's wrong with you? Why can't you get it together? You should know better by now, right? And so even just interrupting that pattern and just looking at it a little bit more objectively can be huge for you.
absolutely. Absolutely. Now you have a membership, right?
I do, yeah. So I have the Intentional Entrepreneur Membership, which is all about. And thank you to you and Stu. And I loved that podcast that you guys did, and I've loved watching your journey with memberships. That kind of birthed out of, again, my love for entrepreneurs and just having a place for them to be able to have support, but then also to just come in and get what they need. Again, I'm all about like quick, easy access. So there's a membership site, there's also a Facebook group, we have weekly calls, and it's just about, again, learning how to do this business in a way that aligns with your life. Alignment is such a big piece for me because I think so many times we're out of alignment in different areas. And then, especially if you build your business out of alignment, it's going to probably not be the best thing for you in the long run.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Which if anybody's been listening to my show for any length of time, you'll know I have dealt with that for the last couple years. It was
Yes.
like I
Yeah.
woke up one day and was like, I didn't want to build a stationary business. I just wanted to, provide a tool to my audience to help them live more purposefully. And all of a sudden I woke up with like, all these like manufacturing deadlines and design, and it's just like, what? This is not what I wanted. So
Right.
yeah, it's so important to be aligned. So how, like, what's something that you can tell people if somebody's like, I am a hot mess, I don't know what I want to do. How do you help people find that alignment?
So I always tell everyone that I don't have their answers. So I'm kind of a unique, different type of coach. A lot of coaches will say like, just follow this process, and this is what will help you. And if that works for you, that's fantastic. But with a lot of my clients, they want to do it on their own and in their own way because it feels more in alignment with them. So I really help people find those answers. I help them recognize the mind drama that's getting in the way and the things and the stories they're telling themselves. A lot of times they're telling themselves stories that it has to look like how someone else is doing it, and then they beat themselves up for it. So we really clear away a lot of that to get to what do you really want. And I love that you shared that story of your business because it's also not about then judging yourself like, oh my gosh, what did I do? I created this business that I don't want, right? It's getting honest, which is exactly what you did, to say, oh, this probably isn't what I want to keep doing. And then shifting direction, which is even also much harder for a lot of people to make that
Absolutely.
shift, right? Because I mean, you've already built this, and then it feels like letting it go. And there's all kinds of things around that. So a lot of times it's really just recognizing the stories that you're telling yourself and get to the core of what you really want.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important because, and I love that you like basically guide them to do it themselves, because ultimately that's what it comes down to is, so many people are starting businesses for different reasons. Maybe they want financial freedom or maybe they want time freedom, and some people have a family, some people don't, so you really can't give people one perfect framework to get them all the same result. You've got to like really teach them how to dig, like what's valuable to you, what's
Mhm.
important to you, because some people, like you said, I think you mentioned this earlier, is so many people are living up to someone else's expectations and completely ignoring that they don't even know what they want for themselves and for their life.
Right. And that was me. When I started to feel the urge that I wanted to leave the corporate world, I had no idea what I wanted. I knew what my husband wanted, I knew what my kids wanted, but I had put myself on the back burner and hadn't even asked myself that question. And so it takes a little bit of experimenting and doing some of this work on yourself to really figure out, what do I really want? What kind of business do I want? What's important to me? Because that was the thing for me. Freedom, time and flexibility and freedom was always my thing. I didn't like having to be somewhere at specific times. I like setting my own schedule. I like having the freedom to work when I want, because I work in really good short segments, which I didn't realize before, because you have to be at work for a certain amount of time. But I can get a lot done in shorter segments. So much of this is just learning to understand yourself and how you work, and then again, what you want. If you want to be with your kids and be able to be around them, you might not want to open up a storefront that's going to require you to be there all the time in the beginning, right? But again, it's really just figuring out what you want, which I think is challenging for people, because it's way easier to just take someone else's answer and just
Mm-hmm.
follow their program, right? And again, that works for so many people. That didn't work for me. And so that's why, as a coach, I've learned how to do that, how to really help people figure out what it is that they want, and find their own answers, because then also they're going to do it from a completely different energy. So many people, if you tell them what to do, they'll do it and they'll have some willpower and they can make it for a while, but then sooner or later, just like you, they're going to say, I didn't really want this. I don't want to be
Mm-hmm.
tied to other people's deadlines and things that
Yeah.
they want. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it really just comes down to like you just have to test it out, you know.
Hmm.
You just have to do it, and action creates clarity, and
Yeah.
you know and that's another thing, is teaching people how to, like, it's okay. Like if you take the wrong action, it's not going to do anything except help you get that
Hmm.
clarity to take the right action, and so
Yeah.
many people like hold back because they're scared to do the wrong thing. And sometimes that's just what's going to help you get even more clarity and get more alignment with what it is that you actually want to do.
Absolutely, because in our heads, we can think that we know what something is going to be like, but until we actually do it, it's a completely different thing. And so much of the entrepreneurial journey, especially, is experimenting and trying things, and it's failing, which is what so many people don't want to do. But it is, and I don't even like to say failing. I just always call it experimenting. It's trying
Mm-hmm.
things, it's seeing what works, it's seeing what you like, it's seeing what you don't like, so that you can figure out ways to do that. And not saying that you're going to love everything that you do in your business, but getting to a place where you're understanding where your strengths are and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah. Okay. And you also have a podcast. I mean, you're just like a woman of all these many talents. I mean, we basically all like do the same stuff. I love it.
We do. I know, but that's what I love. Like, that's why I love having these conversations, because I also want people to know it's totally okay if your things are similar to what someone else is doing, because Corie brings something totally different than I bring, right? And
Yeah.
people are going to relate to you in different ways than what they relate to me, right? So, yeah, so my podcast is called Intentional Life. And again, it's all about this. It's all about deciding on purpose what you want. Instead of just letting life happen to you, it's deciding, yeah, I want to spend time with my kids, or I want to create this business, or whatever it is for you, just being really intentional about the life that you want to create. Because I think that it's just too easy for a lot of us to kind of stay stuck in victim mentality and just feel like life has happened to us and we don't know how to get out of it. And um, while that may be the case, there's always the option to think differently, right? And to choose something different. And so that's what the podcast is all about.
I love it. I love it. And it's so true because I think that's where a lot of people can get held up. And we kind of talked about this a little bit ago when you said, to bring your awesome, because we literally, like you and I, do almost all the same things for our business, but we both do it, like you said, so differently. And some people get held up in that where they're like, oh, there's already so many coaches, or there's already other people making planners, or there's already other influencers, whatever it is. And so they don't do it. And the thing is when you can learn to be unapologetic about who you are, then you start attracting those people that need you and that
Yeah.
the people that you need to serve.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we all have a different energy of how we do it. And I think so much of that comes from a scarcity mentality versus an abundant mentality, right? There is,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my goodness, the one thing that the pandemic absolutely shined a huge light on for me was everybody needs a coach, in my opinion, right? I mean, we need help. I needed help. I was surprised at how challenged I was by everything that was happening. And I had all the tools at my
Mm-hmm.
disposal, but I needed another coach to help me see my thinking. Right. And then there's so many people who, um, they're just going to be drawn to you and they're not going to be drawn to me. And it's totally okay. But
Yeah.
people get in their heads about that and think that means something bad about them. Right. Because
Mm-hmm.
they'll never be a Corie. Like I remember those things thinking, of all different kinds of people, authors and coaches, and like, oh, I'll never be them. Well, guess what? They'll never be me either.
Yeah.
So it's totally okay. And there's plenty for all of us. I really, really love having these kinds of conversations with people that we do similar things because I think it's just not shown enough. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's so helpful to people to see, oh, we don't have to compete with each other. We can actually help and support each other, which is, especially as women, I think is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is, and I sometimes like what I have to do to like bring myself back down to reality is if I ever start to feel that, like, um, that scarcity mentality, like there's not enough, like somebody else already owns the market or whatever, I like literally ask myself, like, how many millions of people, like, even just live in your state? Like if you
Right.
talk to every person in your state, they wouldn't even know whoever it is you're comparing yourself to. Most of them wouldn't even know that person. There's
Right.
billions of people in the world, and there's enough people for you, and there's people that
Absolutely.
need your help.
Yeah. And I think as entrepreneurs too, I work with a lot of my clients where they can dream really big, but the actual day-to-day activities and consistency is where they really struggle. But I think that also happens when they think about their goals, right? So many people think you have to have so many people, you have to have millions of people. Most businesses don't require that, right?
Mm-mm.
It's a much smaller number of people that you really need to have in your circle to be
Mm-hmm.
able to make or do whatever it is that you want. And so even just sometimes bringing yourself back to that of, and that's why a lot of times I will coach people like just thinking about your next client, right? Your next customer, not the next
Mm-hmm.
500, just the next one. How do you need to talk to them today?
Yeah.
What do they need to hear from you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if three people showed up at your front door, would you turn them away or would you talk to them? Like
Right.
it's so important to just remember the one person and to connect, that's something I always tell people when I'm, helping coach and stuff is like if social media, you're supposed to be social. So like don't be afraid to connect with your followers. Just
Right.
because you don't know them. I mean, look at we know each other now. You just never know what kind of connections you can make. And the more intentional I am about getting into my DMs and talking with people, and like it sounds weird sometimes, but I've made some of my best relationships like just through like checking out somebody who follows me and looking at their account and realizing, oh my gosh, like we have so much in common, following them, starting conversations. It's so important to stop like looking at like the number and being like, oh, I want 100,000 followers, because it really doesn't matter how many followers you have. If you can't engage with a few, like how in the world are you going to engage with 100,000?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that reminds me of when I was still in the corporate world, and I wasn't a coach at that time, but I just remember looking around and thinking like, oh, someday, like someday, I'm just going to impact people, and people are going to know about me, and I'm going to be able to spread my message. And then I I heard, mm, see all these people
Mm.
right here, right in front of you. Maybe you might want to start like doing that now. Oh,
Hmm.
okay.
Yes.
Maybe I could start where I am and figure out how to connect with people and, make a difference where I am. I used to have a podcast called Right Where You Are, where I
Yep.
interviewed you a long time ago. And that was the whole premise behind it. What if we can just start being who we've been created to be right where we are, even if it's not where we want to be in the future? I think that's so important too, especially as entrepreneurs. Like, start doing things now. Don't wait until, like, it's the same concept as, people who will say, I'll be generous when, right?
Hmm.
No, you won't. Because if you're not generous now, you're not going to be generous then,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be faithful with what's in your hand,
Mm-hmm.
and because if you're not like, and I just feel this is for me, I just feel like it's a biblical principle. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you have to be faithful with little to be given much. Like if you
Yeah.
can't be faithful with that little, you're not going to be given much. And so it's so important because it's hard. We can kind of start looking off into the future like, well, I can't wait until, I have 1,000 followers, or I can't wait till I have 1,000 people in my membership. Like, well, what's in front of you? Like, who
Mm-hmm.
are you helping right now? Are you showing up for, 10 people in your membership the way that you'll show up for 1,000 people in your membership? So,
Right.
it's just like this mind battle, but it's so important because as soon as you realize you can start helping that one person who, maybe it's a conversation at the grocery store, maybe it's a conversation, with someone in the cubicle next to you. It doesn't matter if you can actually like use your purpose, what you feel like you've been called to do with like single interactions throughout the day, throughout the week, it's all going to start to like build momentum and it also helps you get that clarity in
Mm-hmm.
what it is you're passionate about.
Yeah. And I've seen that over and over, and I'm sure you have too, when you just allow yourself to do what you've been called to do, and to just be who you are, and to listen. Like, a lot of that for me has just been learning to listen and learning to have conversations and learning to be a safe space for people to get really honest with themselves. And that definitely started well before I was ever a coach and knew that that was going to be what I would end up doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so amazing what can happen in our lives when we just choose to like take that next step. Like
Right.
this feels right. I'm just going to keep moving. And like, look at where we are 8 years
Yes.
after meeting.
I know. It's so great. It's so great.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for your new book, and I will
Thank you.
put links to, can we pre-order it or?
Not yet as
Okay.
of the time of we're recording,
Okay.
but hopefully if that changes before then, we'll give
Okay.
the
Okay. Well,
links. We're
I'll
in
put
the
all the
final,
links.
final
Yes.
stages.
Yes. So okay, I have two questions I always ask all my guests. So my
Okay.
first question is, what is one piece of advice, which I mean, we've basically talked about this, but if you could only give one piece of advice to a new entrepreneur, what would it be?
Ooh, one piece of advice. I think the piece of advice would be just get to know yourself first. Really spend some time getting to know yourself so that you can create something that is in alignment with who you are and honoring to what it is that you're bringing to the world.
I love that. I love that. Okay, next question is, what does living on purpose look like to you?
Living on purpose. I love this because that was part of my journey. When I was making, wanting to make a change, I was like, what's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? I don't know what it is. I can't feel it. And John Acuff, our friend, said, stop trying to find your purpose, like live with purpose instead. And so that has really been my journey of showing up every day as who I am and living with purpose and being there. A lot of what I do is create a safe space for people to be themselves and without judgment. And so living on purpose just means, I think, aligned, with God, and being who you have been created to be, and then following those desires. I think that's a big piece that we didn't really talk a lot, but I believe those desires are there so that we can walk them out. And I don't
Mm,
believe that we're like, oh, good luck with that desire. I think that they're there for a purpose. And so exploring them and learning to just live with that. But like we talked about earlier, right now, not necessarily waiting. I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, is they think when I get there, then I'll live on purpose. But for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's just it's living into who you've been created to be and just doing that every day, no matter
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Yeah. I love that. And I do love that. You brought up like the desires that we have, because I do think they're there for a reason. I don't
Hmm.
think they're, especially like, it's not like it's a selfish desire. You know, when you have a desire to do something, like when I had a desire to write a book, to create a planner, like I don't think those were by accident. I totally believe that God put those on my heart, but and then it was my responsibility to actually start walking it out, you know? So I
Hmm.
think we have to honor those desires and really start to explore them. Like, why do I have this desire? You know, I think that kind of goes back to like even what we were talking about before is we can feel like, oh, like, is that selfish because I want to do that? And so we hold ourselves back. And it's like, no, if that desire is on your heart, like, start pursuing it, you know,
Hmm.
because more than likely it's going to be how you walk out your purpose.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree.
Oh, well, we could talk forever about this stuff.
We could. I know. Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a treat and such an
Oh,
honor. And as I told you before we started recording, your journey has been so inspiring to me and just has brought me so much wisdom and just belief in what's possible. So thank you for being an
oh,
example of what's possible.
oh, you're welcome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being on my show. Okay, where can everybody find you?
So the easiest way is at my website, which is just tammyhelfrich.com. You can connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, but the website's the best place to find me.
Okay. Okay. I'll have all that in the show notes and links to get your book and
Yes.
all that good stuff. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. This has been great.
Thanks so much for tuning in, you guys. I will be back in a few weeks with lots of new episodes, lots of new announcements, exciting things happening around these parts of the world in the Corie Clark land, Purpose Babe Society, all that fun stuff, because I'm excited about helping more women pursue their purpose and their passions and making it available to even more than we already have. So stay tuned. Make sure that you are subscribed to the show. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and leave a rating and a review. Share it with all your best girlfriends, biz besties, all the things, because we have really fun things coming up. And I'm excited. I'm excited about the women I'm going to be working with. I'm excited about the community that we're building of women who are passionate about furthering God's kingdom and pursuing the purpose that He's called them to. So I really, really can't wait to share more with you and be part of this journey with you. All right, you guys, I will be back in a few weeks with more episodes. Enjoy the rest of your summer. If your kids are already back in school, then enjoy the time that you have. If you're homeschooling, I've got your back. I actually have a whole new highlight on Instagram of some tips, and I have a new page of all my favorite resources. So I'll put that in the show notes for you as well. And see you in a few weeks.